Hey everybody, sorry for the glare, I got the window back there, but this video is going to be for the forums. It's so comfy on the concrete floor. This video is going to be for the forums and also the people on my channel following me. I'll try to make it short, but I wanted to prove my point because Stuka, Grease, and a few other guys on there have insistently been trying to tell me that the leaf springs are the same, they're the same length, and yes, I'm rolling my eyes because I they're not. And here, I'm just going to get right to the point right now. You guys on the forums have been trying to tell me that the leaf springs are the same, and blah, 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 as I just said. The same length, total length, they're the same. Yes, they will bolt up. Okay, which they did, because I got both leaf springs are in right now. You can see the clean black leaf springs, both of them are in. The problem is this. The 8-foot bed, as I've been trying to explain to people, the springs are different. They are 25¼ inches in the front, from the eyelet to the center bolt, and 31¾ from the rear. The leaf springs that everybody says will bolt up, including the lift springs, they're different. They're 26 in the front and 31 in the rear. I've mentioned this on many videos. I'm sure my followers are probably tired of me mentioning it now, but I have to say this because everything is bolted in now, and I can finally prove that people were wrong. Now, because they are longer in the front and shorter in the rear, it pushes the axle back by 3/4 of an inch because they are longer by 3/4 of an inch and shorter by 3/4 of an inch. This right here, what I want to show you, is definitive proof that I was right and you guys were wrong. Look at the piston on the drive shaft right here. That is 3/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch it got pulled out. That's a lot. Do you see how much it can go in and out? It only has maybe... that might be 5 inches of play right there, and it's already pulled out by, I want to say 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches, maybe. I have to grab a tape measure and check, but it's pulled out pretty far. There's not much left in there, so I'm going to have to actually measure this and see how much play I actually have, because I don't want to be driving on the road and this thing like fall out of the knuckle right here for the transfer case. So yeah, that's quite a bit, and this car has not been driven but maybe 15 miles, so this literally is clean and pulled out from sitting in the shop from me moving the axle. Another problem I had was the brake lines, the parking brake. I actually had to adjust them, pull them forward, adjust the nuts forward by like I want to say a good 1/4 of an inch at least. Because the parking brake, when I stepped on it, was like locking after one click. It got stretched out. It got pulled back because the axle got moved back. Another problem was this. The brake line. I don't know if you guys in the forums can find out where the brake line is, but I'm sitting in glass right now. That brake line right there on the axle tube was already pulled out to the maximum almost with the factory leaf springs. I actually had to cut it off the cross member right there because I just didn't want to get air in the brake line and mess with the connections right there, so I just cut it off. Not a big deal, but thankfully somebody redid my brake lines right here. I've mentioned this in a prior video, and because I cut it off, I was able to actually move it back like 7-8 inches, and that gave me a ton of extra brake lines. So now my brake line is okay. My parking brake cable is okay now. But one thing that also changed, and you can't really tell because I don't have it before and after, but the driveline angle on the axle and the drive shaft, they're pretty wonky right now. It's a little crooked. It was never crooked prior to that. It was kind of straight. Now it's like pointing upward. So the driveline angle has changed. The piston on the drive shaft has pulled out. The brake line had to be lengthened. The parking brake cable had to be lengthened. And another problem is this. The shocks that I'm using right now are the 500-pound Gabriel Lotus shocks that I've had for like 7-8 years now since I had the Wagoneer. They're only like 6 months of use because I took them right off after I did my springs. But pretend this is the angle of the factory springs, right? And that battery right there is the drive shaft, okay? So when I mounted these things on, they were almost touching the drive shaft. The rubber was like kind of right there, but it was fine. Or sorry, almost touching the axle, and it was fine though. When you push the axle back, it changes the driveline angle, or sorry, the angle of the spring, because the spring is still mounted in the frame up on top, but the axle gets pushed back. Because of this, this actually touches the axle tube now. And I was not able to get the shock back on. I actually had to take my flap disc, and this flat part that's kind of clean right there, which is the mount for the spring, I had to cut about 50% of that off, or shave about 50% of that off, and I had to shave maybe 10 to 15% of the actual spring off too, because it was rubbing on the axle tube. So between this thing causing me problems, the brake lines causing me problems, the parking brake causing me problems, the piston being pulled out, it's pretty far out right now. Yeah, they are not the spring. Sorry, they are not the same. So I'm sorry for saying this, but you guys don't know everything. You guys are wrong. These are the factory springs on a J10. They're 4-leaf springs, 24 1/4, 31 3/4, 31, 26. Do the math. So I've known this now for well over a month, because it just takes simple, basic math to figure this out, and I knew that this was going to happen. And yeah, so I took the risk, and it worked, but now I have to get a tape measure, and I have to measure that drive shaft piston down there, because to be honest, I'm a little worried that it's going to fall out when I'm driving, because it got pulled out quite a bit. So, and it's already out quite a bit. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something. You guys were not right. So, and you know, the funny thing is the axle is actually now centered on this thing. Before, because it was being pulled forward, it was actually off center. So Jeep does things for a reason. The 8-foot bed is different than the 7-foot bed. The mounts are the same, positioning as far as length if you measure from A to B, but they're not the same. And clearly the brake lines were meant for these springs, not for these springs. The parking brake was adjusted for these springs, not that spring. And to be honest, the shock mounting probably would have been fine if I had regular shocks on, but because I have these shocks, it changed everything. So it added quite a bit more work for me to have to do. I have to crawl under there, mess with the rusty cable to adjust it. I have to cut shit off of my cross member to move the brake line back. You know, I have to file down my shocks. I have to worry about that piston being pulled out now to the maximum. It's kind of frustrating. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope we all learned something here. Thank you.